Yeah, wanna yeah, on a new yeah.
Hello, this is Ryan Riccatelli with ASNews.net, and this is podcast webcast number 65, and today I have Conrad Bright on the line. Conrad is a legend, I would say, in our sport and a pioneer. He was one of the first guys in California really pushing the scene, and I met him through Jimmy Lewis years back. He used to show me pictures of this guy in California that I needed to meet, and that was Conrad. So Conrad, you're on the North Shore right now, and we've got a big time difference between us, but thanks for coming on the show. And why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
My name's Conrad, and I just want to tell you, Ryan, thank you very much for allowing me to actually be on your show, and and congratulate you on all your success and how you're doing on your magazine, and right now it's 4 o'clock over here, and it's just an epic day, man. It's like one of those days, living over here is kind of, that you kind of pray for. It's like solid, I'll use just standard feet. It's like 20, 30 feet, and they're towing left and right. But the bummer is I'm actually sidelined from a towing incident on my back, along with John Amundsen, who's got a broken wrist. But Amundsen's actually out there towing somebody around, and I actually just got off the ski, just getting it wet. And it's a pleasure to be on the show with you, man. I really thank you for everything.
Oh, Conrad, no problem. It's a pleasure, man. You've been doing this for a long time, and I know that you've inspired a lot of people. And you started kiting in the early days of the sport here in California when there was very few kiters. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It's funny, man. My older brother, whose house I now live in, and he called me back about. I think the only kites out of it were available then were the Whippica 5-meter, and then Robbie Nash had a 5-meter, and they just came out with the 7-meter, and my older brother called me, man. He goes, hey, you got to go out and you got to call these guys over on Maui, and you got to order the 7-meter Nash kite, and you got to try the sport, and he was like, once you try this, you won't believe it, you'll be blown away, and he goes, he goes, just go do it. He goes, don't question me on it, just go do it. So, I got off the phone with him, and I called, at the time, who was it, man? He was a guy that was very well known on the pro scene. I can't remember his name right now, but, he was working for Nash, and I ordered a 7-meter kite, man, and I got it, and I went to, at the time I was living down in the marina, and I took that thing down the marina, I pumped it up, and, flew it around a little bit one day, and the next day I flew it around, body dragged, and then I used to be a big windsurfer up at Leo Crio, and went up there, and there was only there was like 2 other guys doing it at the time. There was this one other guy that was doing it, and then this other guy, and I kind of hooked up with one of them, and I was dragging along this like 8-foot or 8'6" sailboard with this 7-meter frickin' Robbie Nash kite, and just kind of learned on it, and it was my brother was right, man. It was just a trip. And at the time, I started sailing, and then what happened is I actually called this guy on Maui, Bill Foote, and Bill Foote made me this, like, at the time they started using these, like, mini tankers to ride, and he made me this, like, 7'6" mini tanker, and I started riding that, on the 7-meter kite, and it was pretty cool, And then this guy showed up from Maui one day on a wakeboard up in Leo, and he was like throwing back loops and stuff, and I was tripping on that. And then, I went up to Ventura one day, and Jeff Burton and then Corky Cullen were out on wakeboards and wake boots, and they were riding blades, and dude, they were fucking throwing, excuse my language, they were throwing like 30-foot jumps, and I was just like, oh my God, this is sick, man. And they were, I think at the time they were riding Jimmy Lewis pickle forks, and they were riding blades, and they were just throwing these sickest jumps, at the time. They were coming unhooked, and they were just like flying for 30, 40 feet, and I was just like, wow, this is insane. And then I made a couple more trips up there, and then that's when I was introduced to Peter Trow, and Tro was riding the 4.9 blade, and he was like kind of surfing on it. So I ended up like at that time like getting rid of my Nash kite and going out and buying a 4.9 blade and a 7.2 blade. And I called Jimmy Lewis, and I paid, and I had Jimmy Lewis make me a pickle fork, and you know, and since then, you know, I bought this one pickle fork from Jimmy Lewis, and you know, that relationship since then has been like one of the most outstanding relationships I've had in the industry. You know, he has been, the guy has just been insane to me. You know, I don't know if people are aware, but I'm actually a graphic designer. But you know, I bought one board, and then I called him up, and I wanted another one, and he gave me a deal on it. And then I said, hey, you know, I do graphics. You know, can I help you with your website or something? And he said, yeah. And then since then, he's been making pretty much all my boards. And, you know, I've been doing a little bit of a trade, but it's mostly, you know, he actually does more for me than I do for him. And he's always like, you know, what do you want? You know, what do you need? You know, and he's just been like, he's had my back the whole time, you know, since I've been kiting. I've been pretty much, you know, I've ridden on a few of other guys' boards, you know, and I'm always honest with Jimmy. I said, hey, I tried this board. And actually, one of my favorite boards is actually a stretch, a 5.6 stretch. And I let him know that, you know, what I'm riding and when I'm riding. But, you know, all my other boards are Jimmy Lewis's, and that's how that relationship developed. And, you know, and I've been surfing in the industry, you know, and I was surfing around Malibu for a long time. And I actually went on the forum, and I saw one of the questions where, you know, someone asked, hey, are you still a dickhead? You know, are you still cutting people off? You know, you got all this I don't know exactly what he said, but, you know, the bottom line I was and am an aggressive kite surfer, you know, and I was an aggressive kite surfer in Malibu, and you know, it's funny, whoever wrote that, I kind of looked at whoever it was, and I don't even know the person. No, never seen him in Malibu, never met him, the funny thing is I never cut off any other kiteboarders, but yeah, I did have a little bit of an attitude and ego at the beginning, and, you know, I never had any, you know, I had some run-ins with lifeguards, but I was always the first one to say, hey, I'm sorry, you know, what can I do to make it work? And, like I said, that, you know, that one comment, whoever, you know, was saying that, to say, hey, go ask anybody in Malibu, you know, about this guy, it's pretty ballsy, because, you know, I was just back there a couple weeks ago, and there's a few people in Malibu that I particularly choose not to hang out with, and it's not that I just, you know, dislike them. It's just they're people that I just, you know, I don't get along with, you know. And then there's a bunch of kiters in Malibu that I get along with well, and a bunch of guys in Ventura that I get along with well, you know. I mean, and the bottom line, it's kind of a funny thing, you know. It's like this guy's calling me a dickhead and calling me all this stuff, and I'm actually donated my time to do a kite safety sign for the Malibu area, which is posted at 3 different places in the Malibu area. You know, so, I mean, you know, the bottom line is, you know, some people we don't get along with, some people we do, you know. I mean, you know what, I got to tell you, in the beginning of my years in Malibu, most of the people that I really had conflicts was with surfers, you know, and 2 years into it, you know, after my brother passed away, which was about 5 years ago, you know, I kind of like settled back a little bit and kind of looked at where they were coming from and paid more attention to what was going on in life. You know, when my brother passed away, I kind of slowed down a lot in life, you know, and made me look a lot about stuff, you know. So, you know, if I offended that guy in any way, whoever he is, which is, like I said, is really funny, because I have no idea who he is unless he's some guy in Malibu that's writing under a different name. You know, and I actually wrote the guy an email, and I said, hey, you know, come online and, you know, ask me these questions in person, or, you know, show up on the North Shore and ask any of the kiters over there to, you know, come find me, man, and, you know, let me know how you feel about me. You know, that's just the kind of guy I am, man. I really, you know, I'm either a good friend, you know, or, you know, if we cross lines, I kind of just don't really, you know, I don't hate you. I just will choose not to be around you anymore.
Well, Conrad, you know,
that's kind of like that's pretty much my story in the Malibu area.
Well, and you can't ever take what anyone says to heart here, because, you know, realistically, in anything that we do you have haters, man, and that's their job. Their job is to hate, and they love to just like to spew nonsense and to. I mean, obviously, if someone's holding on to something for that long, then I mean, there's bigger fish to fry than to hold on to a grudge. And realistically, I mean, we all love to kite. You've been around for a long time. You've been a part of the sport.
That's why we do it, man. We do it for the love of the sport, and sometimes our love for it or the way that we approach it, sometimes we cross a line.
Absolutely.
And you're right, there are a bunch of haters, and like I said, if I hurt that guy or whatever, like I said, I'm making my amends right now because, that's the bottom line. I don't care if he hates me. I don't care. I mean, like I said, there's a few people in Malibu that don't like me. But the bottom line, Ryan, I wake up every day, and I've been through a lot of stuff. And you know what? I'm all right with who I am, man. And I'm all right in my life today. And you know what? That's more important than what other people think about me or what you think about me, And if I get the pleasure of like coming online and getting to share some information with you and the guys that read your magazine. Fuck, I'm blessed, man. It's like I feel like I get to be of service in some way. So again, like I said, I'm more thankful to you, man.
Well, I get it all the time too. It's just part of being in the sport, and it's a very small sport. And I'm sure even myself, I know I've probably frustrated people over the years in this sport, and I apologize to them all. A lot of times people get upset with me. I don't even realize what I did. So man, you just you just got to keep on keeping on, and like you said, it's about the ride. And let's talk about Jimmy Lewis, because Jimmy Lewis has been he was like the first person that I had heard your name from and seen photos from, and obviously that has developed into the K-Rad, the board. And talk a little bit about how that all came about.
Like I said, man, Jimmy Lewis he's just been a phenomenal guy. I don't know if it's because Jimmy and I just clicked, but I know that Jimmy's had some issues with other riders that have ridden for him. But I just don't know what it is. Jimmy Lewis is a freaking craftsman, man, and there's not very many people in the industry that make surfboards and tow boards and kiteboards the way that Jimmy does. He does it all by hand. He doesn't use a machine. The whole K-Rad thing was he was just being cool to me. I'm not. The bottom line is I'm not really anybody in this sport. I mean, there's so many I'm living on the North Shore now, and there are so many phenomenal riders. I mean, Felix is out here. I mean, he's like one of the most phenomenal riders in the world, dude. And Amundsen's out here, and and Dan Moore kites out here, and frickin' Rio, and I mean, there's the North Shore has so much abundance of a talent, and so does the North Shore of Maui. But Jimmy is just like I said. Jimmy has had my back since the very beginning, and even today, Jimmy and I talk, on a regular basis. It's funny. I talked to Jimmy today, and I told him, I said, hey, you know what? Brian's doing a podcast with me tonight. I want to send you the information if you're interested in, listening to it. And I said, hey, Jimmy, the bummer is the photo they placed on there. It's a stretch. It's not one of yours, man. I said, please, I'm sorry about that. I said, it's just one of those boards that I ride that, happen to work. And, and Jimmy's always like, well, hey, man, I want to make you one what you want, And he just made me this 5'10" fucking balsa wood tow board quad fin that's just fucking insane, I mean, it's just like the most insane board. And, and his 5'2" production board is one of my favorite boards from 2 to 4 feet, 2 to 5 feet. And right now he's making me a little 5'11", and for me, when I ride my boards, I'm big on what Stretch did, and kind of was even like before I even saw a Stretch board, is I like to put plugs in the middle of the strap so that I can add weight, and I found that by adding the weight in the middle of the board, depending on the size of the day, allows you to ride bigger waves. And again, that's what works for me. As soon as the waves start to get over 10 feet faces, I'm going to call them faces, 10, 15-foot faces, I need to add 3 or 4 pounds or 5 pounds to my boards, because if the board is too light and the wave is getting big, what happens is the kite pulls me and the board in front of the wave. And that's the whole concept behind the Stretch and the tow board. It's like you got to have some weight on the board in order to tow with, You know, and that's why boards were being, they went smaller and they went heavier. You know, and Jimmy is just, you know, I mean, you know, the guy is just, like I said, man, he's just one of a kind. There's very few shapers out there that can match Jimmy's ability. You know, and you know, and I'm blessed that I've had the relationship with Jimmy, and you know what, and Jimmy knows that, and you know, and I got Jimmy's back if he ever needed anything, and you know what, he's always had my back, man. You know, and like, you know, and I know a lot of people ride Jimmy boards, you know, and you know, be it a wakeboard or be it a surfboard, you know, a lot of people go to Jimmy for boards, you know, and you know, there's wave riding and there's freestyle, man, and you know, some people use boots and some people don't. You know what? And all the disciplines are cool, man. They're all good. I like them all. It's something, you know. I'm getting up there a little bit older than some of the kids that's doing the handle pass stuff. So I stick to the wave riding. And now where I live, I mean, I only wave ride. It's funny because I was, like I told you, I was back in Malibu or back in LA like a couple weeks ago, and you know, I had no desire to go kiting over there. You know, I actually brought a couple kites, and I have a couple boards over there, but, you know, I just looked at it all, and it just, you know, from what I've been riding this winter and towing on, I just was like, you know, I don't want to do it, but I went up there one day, and I saw all my friends, and I hung out with them, man, and it was killer to see all my buddies, because, you know, that is my home ground. You know, and Jimmy always, like I said, you know, Jimmy was always, you know, always was there to make me a board anytime I needed it.
Well, and you say, you know, Jimmy's I mean, I credit Jimmy Lewis as the reason why I'm involved in kiteboarding. He is just, I mean, 7-8 years ago.
Oh, yeah, he's got to be one of the pioneers. He, you know, if not the pioneer, wasn't it? I mean, it was him and Elliot and what's his name? Fucking Lou, right? Wyman, that frickin' came up with all those wakeboard designs, you know? I mean, and you know, he was one of the first guys constantly changing board designs and doing board designs. For sure he was a pioneer. And like I said, and what the most amazing thing about Jimmy is that he does everything by hand. You know, I mean, he set that shop cam up, and if you really want to go watch him, the guy doesn't use a machine. You know, if you buy a board from Jimmy, a custom board, he makes the thing from start to finish, from scratch, from hand.
Well, I met him over a lot. You know, I was looking. It was when I had first gotten into the sport, and I just from coming from a surfing background, I quickly realized that a wakeboard wasn't going to do it, and I probably should have just stuck on my normal surfboard because that's where we're all at right now. But
right.
I started emailing him, and he was just such a good person, and he actually invited me to come over and stay with him in Maui, and he introduced me to Lou early on, and I mean, if it wasn't for Jimmy Lewis, there's no way I would be involved in kiteboarding. He opened his house to me for a couple weeks. I went over there and stayed in Maui with him, and then for many years, I've gone back and stayed with Jimmy, and I've spent hundreds of hours in his shaping room watching him shape boards by hand, and he's just an amazing individual, very humble. The guy has so much depth and knowledge and has influenced so many of the top, you know, watermen in our sport, and yet you're right. He's the kind of guy who will make you a board for you, and he's got a heart of gold to the point that he really is the guy who he'll give you a board. He'll give you the shirt off his back, and I'm not just...
Yeah, you buy a board from him or a couple boards, and all of a sudden he'll say, hey, man, you know what? You bought 2 boards from me, man. Let me make this third one here for you for free. You know, and he did the same for me, man. He's opened his house up to me, and, you know, it's cool. He came over here a little while ago and brought all his production boards, and we shot them all, and, you know, and he left almost all of them here, and he was like, hey, dude, sell them and send me the money if you can. If not, just ride them, and he, you know, he's just, you're right, he's just that kind of guy, man, you know, and he's definitely, he is one of the reasons why kiteboarding is around and is, you know, where it is today, you know, where other shapers, you know, I mean, a lot of shapers have, you know, the bottom line is, I'm a graphic designer, and, you know, everything's been done before, you know, and I know that Jimmy does a lot of his own stuff, and yet he also, you know, will look at a brewer board and use a brewer template. You know, I mean, the bottom line is a lot of people have looked at Jimmy's stuff and has used what Jimmy's done to go off of what they've done. You know, but again, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, that's the way the world works. It's the way, you know, I mean, look at the bow kite. It's like everybody's kind of trying to figure out what the best bow kite is, and, you know, and Cabrina started with the first one. You know, so it's like, you know, the evolution is the evolution, and like you said, you should have stuck with your surfboard because that's where it's all coming back to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that, you know, Jimmy was, during a time when I was going through a really tough time, I had no money. I couldn't afford anything. And I remember it was right before Christmas, and I get this knock on the door, and it was a box, and Jimmy had sent me a board for Christmas, and it's probably one of the most memorable Christmas presents I ever got. It was a silver Vulcan board that it was a new shape he was working on at the time, but
right.
You know, the guy is just
That's cool, man.
He's that guy, you know, and I would sit there and I'd say, Jimmy, I gotta pay you, and he'd be like, no, Ryan, and I too had helped him with some stuff, always tried to help him with whatever I could, and he's just that kind of guy who will just give you the shirt off his back and never expects anything in return. And the coolest thing is, over the years, I've collected and kept all the boards, and I literally have a little Jimmy Lewis museum of shapes, and they're sitting in the storage, and I've always told him, I said, Jimmy, you know, one day, man, this stuff is going to mean something. We're going to put it up, and we're going to... But my very first kite lesson was Jimmy Lewis, Lou Wayman, and Felix Pivic. I remember that. I was in Maui, and if you remember back in the day, they had a launch pad there that Jimmy had made.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Jimmy put a 3.5, I think it was a 3.5 Whippica 2-line kite in my hand. He had shaped me a brand new board, and I had been fumbling for a few months in California trying to learn on my own. But they go, okay, what you want to do is you're gonna move the kite back over to the right, and then you're gonna send it to the left, and I literally did that, and I must have flown like 15 feet in the air. I went downwind, like probably all the way down to the sewage plant in about 3 seconds. Kite ripped off my hand, lost my board. I was all smiles, and when I got down there, Felix Pivic was there to pick me up. And I mean,
cool.
Talk about, those are when I think of the good old days, those were the good old days, because that was the spirit. And as I reflect back and think about like who was teaching me, and those, I mean, nobody was anybody at that time, you know. I mean,
yeah, no, you know, it's funny because in Malibu, dude, nobody taught me, dude. There was no kite lessons going on. There was nothing going on, you know. I mean, I remember like just flying the kite myself, you know, and like dragging that frickin' 8.6 windsurfer down the beach behind me, man. I remember one day I was trying to go out at Leo by myself, and I had the board, and the kite was up above my head, and frickin' the thing luffed and then powered, dude, and the 8.6 hit me in the back of the head, man. I almost killed myself, you know. I mean, it's like, you're right. I mean, it was the kind of days, you know, and the sport, you know, and luckily the sport has grown, and people don't have to go through that. But, you know, it's like, the funny thing is, like, seeing a lot of guys show up, try to do it themselves or without a lesson, and show up with kiting, going, you know, thinking that it's going to be easy, and like throw the kite up, and then all of a sudden they're flying down the beach, dude. And I swear to God, I've never seen them again. You know? I mean, yeah. I think that there's been a couple experiences in a couple places, because it is ultimately it's an adventurous sport. You know, it's for guys that, you know, it's a thrill-seeking sport. It's not an easy, you know, the learning curve is easy in a place maybe like where you're at, where the water's not so deep and you feel safe, but in other areas it's not so safe. You know, it's not so safe to learn. You know, and then once you start getting into, you know, certain situations, everything changes. You know, because the ocean, the bottom line is the ocean and lakes and places. It's like, you know, the environment is constantly changing. You know, the wind and the waves and everything is constantly changing. So you got to be constantly aware of it. You know, luckily for the people that are getting into it today or have gotten into it in the last couple of years, you know, there's a lot more safeguards in it. You know, and they've been more fortunate. Where, like you said, you and I and, you know, and some of those other guys, you know, that you mentioned, you know, it's like we all had to learn a little differently, man. We had to do it ourselves. So, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes you kind of go. Sometimes you're kind of wishing, you know, you're kind of like going, God, I wish those guys would have experienced what I experienced, so that, you know, they would know, you know, how, you know, what your dues are, that you got to pay your dues.
Well, you know it's funny too, not to just keep on talking about Jimmy Lewis, but Jimmy Lewis was the first person who motivated me to write about kiteboarding, and he actually helped me submit my first article to Kiteboarding Magazine with Tom James back in the day when and just thought I was just a really good writer and said, man, you need to just keep on doing this. You write so good. And I was like, nah, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. And here I am today. And I've always, whenever I see him, I'm like, Jimmy, you know what? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. I really wouldn't. And he always is so humble. No. You know, you got there because you worked hard and blah, blah. But, you know.
But that's true, though, Ryan. You know, you did get there. I remember when you left, Tom, and you and I had, you and I had a couple conversations about, when you were starting your magazine and what was going on, and the bottom line is, you know what, you worked really hard at what you're doing, and you deserve all the credit, it's like, we never know, man, if something's, the bottom line is we never know from moment to moment, as human beings we take things for granted, but the bottom line is we only have this very moment that we're actually in right now, because we don't know what the next moment's going to bring. And the bottom line is, you do deserve all the, all the credit because you did do all the work. He pushed you in the right direction, and you thank him for that. But like I said, I remember a couple of the conversations, and you were a little bummed out, and I just said, dude, man, just stick with it. You'll be all right, And Rick, I mean, look at it. Your magazines are successful, and you do a good job, man. And there's good writing in it, and there's good, there's good stuff in it. It's kind of a bummer that. The industry is kind of where it is, and it can't. I mean, to me, it's not like you said earlier. It's not a big industry, and it seems like the industry has had a struggle ever since the very start, and it's kind of one of those industries that it's going to be hard to grow, because there's very few places to do it, and there's a lot of companies that are trying to compete for the market. And, and it seems like almost every year one of the companies falters on one of their products, which gives them a setback, and hopefully they'll all figure it out, and you'll make even, your magazine will become even more successful and everything will even be better. But, at the bottom line is everything, and this is me personally speaking. Like I said, I'm sidelined for a couple weeks, everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. There's not a coincidence that, you left the other magazine. The coincidence was that you started your own.
Yeah.
And if that didn't happen, then you wouldn't be sitting here talking to me, and you wouldn't be talking to the Scheibel brothers the last time you did it, and talking to Mauricio and the other guys and all the other guys that you've interviewed, and putting out the information that you get to put out. Which is what you're doing, and that's what's kind of cool about America. It's about free speech, about, publicity, putting publicity out there about this industry.
Well, and that's kind of, what the reason why I got involved with what I'm doing is mainly just I love it. And all of us here, it's not, fortunately, when I started, it was me. And then, obviously, Marina Chang came on. And now I've got a team of people, Paul Lang, Gary Martin. Gary Martin followed me over, too, from Kiteboarding Magazine. And, it's just what really makes this magazine, the Kiteboarder Magazine, is the people out there. Photographers, world-class photographers have helped me and my magazine get to where it's at by donating photos to it. We're not the magazine that has a ton of money. We're the magazine that's fighting from issue to issue to just keep on producing our magazine. Unfortunately, now we're in a position to where, we put out 14 magazines. We just shipped another one to the printer, and we're not stopping. And it's because that people see that what we're doing is we work hard and we all kite, and they see it in the end product. And yeah, people like yourself, people like, Stephen Weitzel. I could list a laundry list of people who said exactly the same thing.
All the guys over here, all the photographers, they're all good guys, man. All the kiters, all the photographers, all the, and all the kite manufacturers, you could go on forever and ever, man.
They said exactly what you said. They said, Ryan, just keep on doing what you're doing. And it's funny because those same words come out of my mouth to up-and-coming kiteboarders, to anyone who I see just that's really trying to lead the charge in whatever they're doing. I say those same words that, you said to me and others have said to me and Jimmy said to me. It's like, hey, just stay focused, stick to what you're doing, stick to your guns, believe in it, and it'll happen. And I feel just as blessed as you do to be a part of this sport. I feel lucky that, when we started this podcast, I thought that people would think I was a complete idiot, and a lot of people probably do. But the fact is, I'm still out here. We produced 65 shows, and our listening audience has increased to the point where I get emails from around the world from people who just, when I miss a show, they're like, hey, man, where's the next one? And people just loving what we're doing, and that's what it's about, man. But, I have a bunch.
Awesome, man.
I have a bunch of questions that have come in from the lounge.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, but first I want to talk about, I want to talk about who's sponsoring me, if that's all right, man.
Yeah, go for it, man. I know you got to throw that in.
Yeah. Well, I got, it's funny. It's like, whatchamacallit, that I've been working in the industry for a while, and this is just super cool because, I was working with Whippica for a year, when I finally went over to inflatable kites, and these guys took me on, Burton and Duffy, who's now doing wakeboards, and then I ended up with Gastra and Burton, and Gunner and Burton, and last year, they fired, the Gastra went to, guys in Germany, and they fired me, and I was still on Gastra's last year, and and I was calling around, and I was like, like I said, I'm an older guy. I'm fairly, I'm all right kiter. I don't consider myself fabulous or great by any means. I put out, and I was calling all, a bunch of people. I called North. I called a bunch of guys, and I called Shannon, man, and I said, Shannon, I'm looking for some kites. I'm trying to, all I want is a quiver of kites, and all the other guys wanted to sell me kites for cost. They all know who I was. And Shannon was like, dude, no problem, man. And I go, well, this is what I'll do. He goes, you don't have to say another word. He goes, I know who you are. I had Shannon and Andy out at my house, staying at my house in California one time. Those guys came and kited with me. And Shannon knew who I was, and he was like, fuck, man, no problem, no worries, And I've been on the best kites for the last year, and they've been... And I'm so stoked that I actually got on those kites because, I think that all the boat kites are good, and I give props to all the kite companies. But you know what? Those kites have worked so insane for me. I never used to unhook, and in this last year because of the best bow kite, which is what I'm flying. I'm doing a lot of more unhook stuff, And again, I give props to all the guys that fly unhooked, that fly in the chicken loop or whatever. It's like I kind of fly mostly in the chicken loop, but a lot of, this year I've been flying a little bit more unhooked, and it's like, and I got to throw out that I'm really, that I'm thankful for those guys, and actually really thankful for Shannon for actually knowing who I was. He knew exactly who I was, but he was just like, hey, no worries, bro, man, I got you covered. We'll send you some kites, and what happened is Kingsley came over and left a quiver of kites for me. And they've just sent me a whole new quiver of kites, and I just, I want to tell those guys thanks, and it's like, and I got, a couple 6 shots from, the helicopter that those guys really liked, and they used me in an ad that, I think you are probably one of the only guys that have given me, more props in your mag than any other magazines, so.
Well,
I had to throw that out, and
Jimmy
sponsors me, and then Hinano sponsors me, and Kane and Sunglasses sponsors me, man. Now, as far as all the other questions, shoot, bro.
It's
kind of throw that out.
It's funny that you say that because, that's what we pride our magazine for, is that we don't make the magazine around the same 10 guys. I look at some of the other publications out there, and I think they're great. They do a great job, but it's the same 10 guys all the time. And you know what? I know that this sport is made up of a lot of people, and I go out of my way to support the local regional people who are the people who actually make this sport what it is.
Right.
I go and I do a profile, like my last issue, we did a profile on Shell Island, and we did a profile and the next one that I just shipped to the printer on Tourmaline, and I've got Tommy Trezera in there, I got Paul Eric Pomard in there. These are people that nobody knows. These are people who work real jobs.
Hey, I'm on MySpace, I promote MySpace, and some kid, asked me to be his friend, man, and I looked on his freaking page, and the dude was fucking riding he's riding 10 foot somewhere. He looked like a spot in Hawaii, and the guy was just ripping. I'm like, yeah, of course you can be my friend, It's like just some young kid, man. There's there's so many people out there that are so good in this sport. That's why I said, you know, I mean, I could name so many people off, give so many props to so many guys. You know, I named a few earlier. You know, and it's like, you know, it's like you said, you know, it's the same 10 guys because, you know, those 10 guys are actually working for those kite companies, and it has to be those 10 guys, I guess. You know, I don't really know. I mean, I know that you mix it up quite a bit, you know, but, you know, I mean, it's kind of, you know, you could kind of, after a while, I think kiters in general get tired of seeing the same 10 guys, you know, and not to say that they ain't fucking great, because you know what, they're beyond great, you know, but you know what, there's 10 more guys right behind them coming up that are going to be, you know, will be in the same position within a couple years, and then those guys will kind of fade out a little bit, you know, and luckily, you know, hopefully, you know, like we talked about early on, you know, it's the whole reason. At the end of it all, the reason why we do this sport and the reason we keep going out and the reason we keep throwing up a kite is because, you know what, we enjoy it. We enjoy going out and we enjoy kiting with others, and, you know, kiting our buddies, you know, and kiting in a couple places where there's not too many people, and you know, and catching a nice, you know, big bomb or throwing a big jump or doing what makes you feel good, and not necessarily just because you're getting paid, you know. I mean, it's like, if you're getting paid, that's great, man, you know. It's like, you know, I remember, you know, like, you know, when I rode for Gasroom for these guys' company, man, I was always like, you know, it's funny, like that one guy was talking all that stuff. I was like, maybe it's one of the guys up there that, you know, in Malibu that sells stuff, because I was always the first guy to put the kite in somebody's hand and say, hey, try this kite, man, it works pretty good. And then, you know, the bottom line is a lot of guys, when I was in Malibu, ended up riding the kind of kites that I was riding, you know, and you know, and I don't think it's because of how I was riding, it's because I actually said, here, try the kite. You know, give it a shot. You know, and that's kind of what, you know, your publication's kind of like. It's like, hey, here, let's give this guy a shot. Let's put, you know, let's run this guy's. You know, I mean, I've seen a couple new photographers' names in your magazine that I haven't seen. You know, and I'm not a big forum guy. Trust me, man. I don't spend a lot of time on forums, and I actually really don't pick up the magazines that much. You know, because I'm blessed. Like where I live, I live right on the ocean. You know, through my brother's passing, and I'm blessed that I get to play in the water right here, and I don't, you know what, I live my own dream, you know, I don't have to live the magazine dream, you know, it's just, you know, and I don't, you know what, I'm whatever happens, you know, and I give, you know, like I said, all those guys that are over here on the North Shore, man, you know, they're all good, they all rip, man, and then there's a couple that stand out. You know, and there's a couple that are actually from the North Shore that stand out, and then there's others that have, you know, that have just moved over here that are stand out. So, I mean, you got all kinds, and you got a bunch more coming up, man. You know,
absolutely.
You know, and like me, I've done a lot more towing this winter than I have kiting, and I've gotten some incredible days towing, and honestly, I prefer towing over kiting, but kiting is the next best thing to towing, because it's basically what it is. It's towing without the ski. You know, it's like you have a kite in your hand, and you get to get pulled in a wave.
Hey, you know what? I got a question here from Toby at Kite Forum, and he wants to know, how would you improve the kites to make them better for the waves?
You know what? I'm not a kite designer, you know, and like I said, you know, I mean, there's some guys that ride, you know, if I could actually, you know what, Toby, I don't really know how to answer. I couldn't answer that question because I'm not a designer. I mean, you know what, right now, I like my best kites. My best kites are working really good for me, especially in offshore dusty conditions. You know, one of the spots that we ride, you know, I don't like put out names or anything. It's like, you know, it gets pretty gusty and pretty gnarly, and that kite works really good for me. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, to make it better for wave riding, you know, you would have to get somebody that's actually, you know, like the guys that are designing kites today, you know, they could maybe even go take it a step further and bring someone from the outside in even further, somebody a little bit more knowledgeable in that industry, you know. I don't know, you know. I know that, you know, some guys still ride, you know, I know like Felix still rides a sea kite, and he rides it really tight, and he rides it unhooked, you know, and he fucking rips. You know, he rips strapless, he rips in straps. Me personally, I don't ride strapless. You know, just because, I'm a goofy footer and I end up riding starboard tack most of the time. You know, and I like to be in the straps, you know, like I said, I think they're really on the right direction on the kites that they got now for riding waves. But then again, I mean, you're going to hear a bunch of different controversies that, oh, no, sea kites are better, you know, fixed lines are better for riding waves, unhooked is better. But you know what? Hey, whatever works for the individual, it works, man. Whatever the guy wants to ride is cool. You know, that's the way I look at it. As far as making the kites better, I mean, I think they're on the, I think one of the reasons why the best kite is working really good and isn't backing out of the window is because it's so much lighter than a lot of the other kites. You know, it's lighter than the Nash kites. It's lighter than the caution kites. And sometimes I think that the designers, they forget that, sometimes the kite being light makes a little bit of a difference. It doesn't fall out of the sky. It doesn't fall backwards, So, again, I'm not a designer. I'm not a kite designer. I'm a graphic designer. The funny thing is, it's like, I'm out a couple weeks. I'm actually going to start airbrushing some surfboards, which I haven't done in a long time, which I'm kind of really looking forward to. But, all I can say to that is that I think they're on the right track, and I think you got to give all the kite companies props for the way, for, what they're doing. I think you got to give Cambrina props for coming up with the first bow kite, and then the other guys that are following suit. I think that, from what I've heard, and I think what's happened is I think that a lot of, companies have a lot of sea kites in stock now, and it's hurting the industry right now because they have no way. Everybody's kind of looking for the bow kite.
Yeah.
But now on the other hand, like I like my best bow kites because I can ride unhooked. Some of the other bow kites you can't do that. I know the Nash one's really hard to do. I think it's an evolution. I think like we're only like 20% of a way to the evolution of where kiting's going to be. It's the same as windsurfing. Windsurfing was an evolution, but again, it's the same kind of sport. Windsurfing got, the most popular in the 80s, and it's funny. I was riding out here with, it's funny, because I was riding out here with, where I live, and I was riding with Robbie Nash and Jason Polikow, man, and Jason Polikow turned around and burned me on a fucking solid 20-footer, dude, right? And he made me look stupid. He fucking sat there, and that's Polikow. Polikow is just a phenomenal windsurfer. The guy just rips. But, he pretty much just kind of like, I was already on the wave coming from back behind it, and he just turned on the wave, dropped in on me, and there was nothing I could do. He just went up, and I'm surprised that it hasn't been in the windsurfing magazine yet, because, I've seen the shots of it, and he just throws this fucking 15-foot aerial, right in front of me, and I'm just looking up going, dude, thanks, man. But, it was kind of like, fuck, he was shredding, but I was kind of like, why'd you do it to me? But, what am I going to do? There's nothing, And then he did it to me again. I went up to him and I said, hey, Jason, I don't really want to ride on the same wave with you. And he didn't do it to me again, But the kites, I think, are in the right direction, And again, I think that everybody's going to want to ride their own disciplines, And I think, I know Davey Blair. Davey Blair likes to ride a flat kite in certain conditions in the surf, but he likes his sea kite for other conditions.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe, again, some people, depending if it's super offshore, I think the flat kites are the way to go. If it's more onshore, you could probably get away with the sea kite, I think, again, it's going to be each individual's preference, and being able to try the different kites and see what works for you.
There's a bunch of questions here I want to get through about boards and stuff. And
for sure.
And let's see. This one comes from New York City Kiteboarder, NYC Kiteboarder. He says, what size and type of board would you recommend for a bigger guy, 185, 210, for small to medium-sized surf? And what kite with that setup?
Again, it depends on when. I'm exactly that weight. I'm 195, right? And to me, I'm kind of luckily, you know, the lucky part about me is I get my stuff for free. You know, I don't get any money, you know, but I get everything for free. So I have a couple different sizes. I think for that guy, if he had to pick one board, I would say to go with something around between a 5'10" and a 6-foot board. And I would buy, you know, I would have a 9. You know, I don't know what the wind is back there. I mean, it's like, I mean, in my quiver, I have a 7, 9, and 13. You know, and then I have a couple different size boards. You know, one, you know, if you know, I'll ride a little bigger board with a little smaller kite on a bigger day. You know, and if it's a smaller day, I'll ride a smaller board with bigger kite. It just kind of depends. I like my 5'2" Jimmy Lewis. I love, you know, on head high waves and you know, a little bit above that with whatever kite I need for that kind of day. You know, but there's guys, again, you know, it's preference. You know, that guy, you know, what may work for me may not work for him. My suggestion would be, you know, like, he may want to go strapless, he may not want to go strapless. Like I said, you know, it's like, you know, Felix and Hat only goes strapless, and Felix goes both. He goes strapless and strapped, and you know, and he's really proficient at both. We're going both ways. I would probably, you know, I'd have to say like a 6-foot board, and again, you know, you need a couple kites in your quiver, so he's going to have to buy a couple kites.
Yeah. What's the difference, or have you even had a chance to play around with thrusters versus quads?
Oh, yeah, I played around with them totally, man. You know, I ride a quad, and when it gets really big, like, you know, when it gets, you know, up to about 25 foot, you know, I think the biggest days that I've been out on so far has been about solid, you know, 12, 13 foot of wine, which is about up to about 25, you know, maybe, 25-second reefing, you know. And, you know, I like the quad that I've been riding, you know, this 5'6" quad, and I add a bunch of weight to it. And that one seems to work good. Riding the board from the very beginning of the wave all the way in through, you know. Now, when you get on a bigger wave, you know, one of the reasons why a lot of the guys that are tow surfing are riding the quads is because when you get on a bigger wave, you're not going straight up and down. You know, you're actually riding the wave and you're carving the wave. So that's what's happening. You know, as far as once the wave starts to go a little smaller, man, I believe all in thruster. You know, I mean, you want to go, you know, the 5'2" thruster that I ride and the one that Jimmy's making me right now and the ones that I've ridden, you know, the 5'10", you know, as soon as it's head high and you know, and I've watched Rio, you know, and Felix, you know, it's like those guys will go they'll do a straight, and Amundsen, they'll do a straight bottom turn and go straight up the face and crack the lip. And so have I, you know, with the thruster. Where as with the quad, you can't, you know, I heard that, you know, Ona was telling me that there's a couple guys in Santa Cruz that are riding some quad stretches that are a little bit more like surfboards that are doing that he says he's seen them go straight up and down. But, you know, a thruster seems to be a board that goes more straight up and down. You know, a quad is a board that goes, it's going to go a lot faster. You know, I mean, it's funny how the evolution of the kiteboard is already changing, you know, and like I said, some guys like to ride a little bigger and a little lighter boards, and like for me, what I've found, you know, I'm more into riding bigger surf and being out on second reef kind of stuff. You know, I still go and ride the smaller days and stuff. But what's helped me and what I'm doing is, like I said, I'm adding weight. You know, I'm putting 3 pounds on, I'm putting 5 pounds on, I'm putting 8 pounds on, depending on how big the day is. And it's the same thing I do when I go tow surf.
Well, here's another question. It says, this comes from SQ225917. It says, Conrad, what makes the most difference to the big wave experience? Is it the kite or the board? And how do these factors, how do these two factor the quality of the wave ride?
Well, I mean, that's a trick question, because you know what? What makes the big wave experience is actually the big waves. You know, it's like it's having the balls, you know, to just throw up the right. It's nice to have the right kite and the right board, you know, that works in the right conditions, you know. But it's actually having the right wave, you know, in the right conditions. And You know, I mean, it's the actual whole experience of like throwing up. You know, I mean, preferably I'd like to be on a 9-meter kite with the frickin', you know, like a 5'10" thruster. You know, that's a little bit weighted in about a 20-foot day, you know, that's just rifling like the J-Bay, you know, and that sometimes we get those kind of conditions, you know, and that's what makes the experience. It's, you know, I mean, dude, I'm sitting on my upper porch right now, and these guys are towing into like 25-foot surf right now, and I'm watching them catch wave after wave after wave, and it's not. It's the actual experience of them getting to get pulled into that kind of wave, and that's the exact same thing what happens with kiting and riding a big wave. All of a sudden, you know, where you can't paddle out into, you have a kite that just pulls you into the lineup, and you're into some 25, 30-foot face waves. You know, it's the same up in Santa Cruz. I've seen the Schiavo brothers rip, and a few of those guys rip. You know, they got a couple good places up there. You know, those guys were laughing at me one time. I was up there, and I was riding a 6-meter, and they were all on 8s, and they were laughing at my little kite. You know, but it was, you know, it was solid. It was solid 6 to 8 foot of line. You know, those guys get some solid shit up there. You know, and those guys, you know, they throw down. You know, and I've had some good experiences. You know, I haven't had. You know, the biggest surf that I've gotten to ridden has been over here. You know, I haven't, you know, been anywhere else. You know, I had the opportunity to go to Africa in March, and you know, I'm still trying to make that trip. But like I said, I'm sidelined for a couple weeks from a towing thing, and you know, maybe I'll get to, you know, get some big surf down there. But you know, I'm always game for big surf. You know, I'm fortunate that I get to tow with you know one guy, you know, Dan Moore, that fucking. You know, when he's over here and it's not too big for him to go to Maui, I get to tow with him all the time, and it's just and the funny thing is, and I get to kite with him all the time. You know, it's the funny thing, he used to live next door, and it was just him and me would be the only guys out at this one spot, and now, you know, it's not that many guys will still, once it gets really big, you know, once it gets hairball, you know, only a handful of guys go out.
Well, here's a question.
So it's kind of like just the whole experience of, you know, when the conditions all come together and you have the opportunity, you know, to put up that kite and put that board under your feet and go out and ride.
I have another question coming in from the lounge. It says, what's your point of view on backside versus front side?
You know what? Luckily, you know, I did a lot of windsurfing before I got into kite surfing, so I can ride starboard tack, I can ride front side right. You know, I'm a goofy footer. You know, occasionally I'll ride backside. You know, I think it's like, it's whatever, you know, and again, man, to me, it's whatever makes the individual happy. You know, there's a lot of guys over here that ride strictly backside. You know, and they won't go starboard tack, and they're goofy footers. Hey, man, if that's what they want to do, Robbie Nash, dude, will go backside. I've seen the guy fucking kill it backside, you know, and then I've seen him go front side, you know, windsurfing and fucking just throw some of the sickest shit you've ever seen. So, I mean, I don't have a view on it. I say whatever works for you, you do it. You know, I mean, like I said, I was fortunate enough to be in the windsurfing end before I got into kiting, so I can ride front side starboard tack pretty well. You know, I can hit the lip pretty good. You know, I can throw the tail out. I can do some airs. I can. You know what I mean? So that helped me a lot. I can switch my feet. You know, what I suggest is, you know, you give it a try. You know, you try to go front side, and you try to, you know, get used to going front side. And you know, like I said, I can't go front side strapless if my life depended on it. I would have to go backside. And when the times that I've gone strapless, starboard tack, I've had to go backside. But fuck, I've seen Felix go fucking strapless front side, you know, starboard tack, and just do the sickest shit. And he's a goofy footer.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, I think if backside's working for you, do it, man. You know, like I said, I've seen guys ride backside really good, and there's guys that will strictly ride backside.
Did you read that
Luckily, I can ride both ways. You know, same with Rio. You know, Rio can ride regular foot really well too. The kid just throws some sick shit.
Did you read that article that interview that I did with Pivik in my the latest magazine?
I I read a little bit of it. You know, Pivik and I love Pivik, man. We're not really. I wouldn't say we're just not. I saw a lot of the shots, and so, you know, like I said, man, Pivik, I would have to say Pivik is one of the best kiteboarders in the world right now. You know, and I've seen some forums where it said, oh, that guy's a fucking dick. He won't, you know, he wouldn't give me the time of day. You know what I mean? Hey, we all have our moments, you know, but, you know, Pivik and I are not really seen eye to eye right now. I don't really hang out with Pivik that much, you know what I mean? But you know what? I give that guy so much props. He's one of the most insane kiters that I've seen.
Why is it that Pivik just has that tendency to just rub on people's nerves, man? He's one of my longtime good friends, and I know you've known Pivik for a long time, but it's funny.
Yeah.
To love Pivik is...
Like we were talking earlier, you and Pivik showed up at my house in, you know, the marina, and we took that trip up to Waddell, man.
Absolutely.
It was fucking good time.
Absolutely.
And I hung out with Pivik for quite a while, and then he kind of just did something that, you know, like I said, as a human being, you know, when somebody does something to you, you step back, and you know, I'm sober, and I don't get loaded, and it was something that it kind of crossed the line with me, that him and I, we didn't talk for a while, and then we kind of made up, but, you know, it's just something I just choose not to be around Pivik that much. You know, I kite with him, and we say hello, and we're friendly and stuff, but, you know, like I said, you know, you just, like you were just saying, you know, Felix is this guy, he can get on people's nerves, man, and I don't think he means anything bad by it, but it's just what happens, you know?
Well, you know, I've been kicked out of many bars because of Felix. I've been kicked out of houses because of Pivik.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. It's funny because everybody I know has the same experience with Pivik, but nobody can deny the fact that the kid on a kiteboard he's a maniac. I mean, he puts himself into positions that I don't see a lot of people putting themselves into.
No.
He charges. I've seen him ride to the point where he's got holes and rashes in the side of his, like from his harness, just rubbing into his sides. I mean, and he keeps going out. The kid is an animal on the water, and you know, he's been an incredible. He's pushed our sport, and that was my point.
He is. Yeah, he has in every aspect, man. You know, you're absolutely right, and you know, he should get more props than what he's getting. You know, I mean, but. You know, it's like, you know, the industry is a small industry, and, you know, and people aren't paying it's hard for an industry that isn't making, you gotta remember, Ryan, this is not a $1 billion industry, this is $1 million industry, and $1 million industry is a small industry.
Oh, I agree.
And the kid should be getting more props. He's probably the most publicized kite surfer in the world.
Yeah. Oh, he is, and the saddest thing is he won't play the game. He doesn't play the game like, you know. So
you know, I mean, I think you know, he plays the game. I mean, he just, you know, he can't help himself. He just likes to have a good time, man.
Yeah, that's true. Here's another question real quick from Toby. We're getting almost to time, so we're going to have to wrap this up real quickly.
Yeah, no problem.
It says, are the boards almost perfect for the waves with a kite, or is there more room for improvement?
I would have to say, you know, it's style of rider. You know, I mean, I think there's still more room for improvement. But you got to remember, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to like surf with the kite, and you know, the surfboards are pretty much well perfected, I think. You know, I mean, the tow boards are still improving, they're still changing. And, you know, because maybe the tow boards are still improving and changing, maybe, yeah, the kite boards are going to have to, you know, still improve and change. But, you know, again, you know, I mean, you know, I've seen guys go out on frickin' just regular surfboards with straps or no straps and just absolutely kill the wave. So, you know, is there room for improvement? Yeah, man, there's room for improvement in everything. There's room for improvement in you and me.
Yeah.
You know, there's room for improvement in the way that we walk our path on this planet. There's room for improvement in the entire world. But, you know, that's a little bit more philosophical. But, yeah, there's probably room for improvement on the boards. They're definitely not perfect by any means. You know, if somebody's actually shaping a kite board.
Well, here's another question, and actually it's the way we started off. I just want to ask it because obviously the guy, he took the time to write this question, but it's from and Andre Santa Cruz, and he basically calls you out saying that, you cut everybody off, lifeguards, you get beaches closed, blah, 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 blah. But he basically said you must have had to change your attitude in Hawaii to avoid getting your ass kicked. Now, I don't know anybody. I've never heard of anybody wanting to kick your ass, so I'll let you address that.
Like I said, man, it's a fun, like I said, I looked up that dude and I've never even seen that guy's face. I don't even know who he is. I don't know why he would write that, for some reason he's bitter at me, but no, I didn't have to change my attitude. You know what? I have a lot of friends over here on the North Shore, man. I had a lot of friends before my brother. People don't know, my brother lived over here for 28 years, and I've been coming over here for a long time, and I didn't have to change my attitude, and I'm friends with a lot of lifeguards over here, and and there's a couple people that, that don't like me over here too, and there's a couple guys that are kiters that are disgruntled about, some of the ways that people are kiting and what's going on over here, and me personally, I don't, I don't care, you know what I mean? Like I said, that guy, he doesn't, I don't care about him, because I'm not going to I don't have a resentment at that guy for saying that or for doing whatever, because if I was to fill my mind with the resentment at that, then I'd be wasting my energy, and again, like I said, I know a lot of lifeguards over here, and I kite with them, and I'm good friends with a lot of the kiters over here, as I was in Malibu, and like I said, you know what? There was times where I got in conflicts with some of the lifeguards. I never got a beach closed. I've never gotten in a fight over there. I've never even come close to getting in a fight over here, So, no, I didn't have to change my attitude. I'm an aggressive kiter. I go out, when it gets big, when it gets, I charge as hard as I can. Some days I'm on, some days I'm not, as far as like, it's funny. There's a lot of guys that show up over here from Europe and from other places, and they get into the lineup, and they don't know anything about wave etiquette. And there was guys in Malibu that started kiting, and they didn't come from a surfing background. They don't know about wave etiquette. So that this guy's telling me I'm cutting people off when half of these guys don't even know wave etiquette. I mean, the guy that's coming from the back and has gone the furthest out, he's the one that just allows the wave. And like I said, I got burned twice on 20-foot base waves by Polacow, literally, where I was on the wave, already on it, coming from way out, and he literally, turned on the wave, 30 feet down the wave in front of me and rode the wave, and fucking, and basically snuffed me. So, it happens to everybody, So, if he thinks that, I burned him, like I said, hey, sorry, bro. Me personally, I don't think I think it's coming from somebody from Malibu that doesn't like me. So be it, And again, if I in any way offended that guy, like I said, I apologize. But like I said, I know.
Don't take it to heart, Conrad. I mean, it is what it is, and we won't waste any more time on this.
The funny thing is, I've had like 2 or 3 of my buddies from Malibu come over here and hang out with me over here and kite with me, and so, for whatever reason, the guy is bitter with me, and he wants to put me down. That's cool, man. He did a good job. Cool, right on. Congratulations. But I didn't have to change my attitude, and I don't get in fights, man. I mean, I could tell you some super funny stories. I live next door to one of the gnarliest fucking guys on all the North Shore, but I'll save that for another time.
Well, Conrad, we got to wrap things up, so I want to give you a chance to throw some quick shout-outs and thank yous to whoever you like. And, man, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, hey, man, who I want to thank the most is you, Ryan. Thank you actually for, all the props and for actually having me on the show, And again, I want to thank the guys over at Best for actually, turning me on to some kites, and Kinsley and Shannon and the guys from Hinano Surfwear, they set me up with a lot of stuff to wear and cane and sunglasses. And again, whoever, the one guy who's bitter at me, man, hey, peace, bro. Don't be hating, and all the guys that, that are in this industry, man, I give props to, and you know what the funny thing, Ryan, is? It's progress, not perfection, man. Nobody's perfect in this world.
It's all about the last man standing, man. It's all about resilience, man, and sometimes, that's what it's about.
Let me throw one more thing out, Brian, you know, the bottom line is none of us are getting off this fucking planet alive, dude. So, you know, we make our mistakes. We try to make our amends. You know, we try to, you know, like I said, man, you know, I lost my brother 5 years ago and I lost my mom last year. You know, it's like for me, life is precious. You know, I live moment to moment because to me that's all that matters. You know, it's this very moment that we're in. You know, and again, it's been a pleasure, you know, being able to talk with you, and I'm super stoked that, you know, you're doing what you're doing and you're getting the props that you deserve, dude.
No, you know, it'll come, but, you know, we're just going to keep on keeping on, and we're all just a big team in this sport, and we're all just pushing it. And so, like I said, dude, keep on doing what you're doing. There's a guy that made a comment in the lounge. He said it's good to see a real wave rider who charges hard. And I mean, dude, that's what, I don't know who this guy is, but that's what he said about you, and it's just cool that he even showed up today to listen to us talk. So, and I know he showed up before on other shows, but that's the point, dude. What you're doing, people are watching it. I'm watching it. People are watching what I'm doing, and I watch what all the people are. I watch what all the young and up and comers are doing. We got this new kid in the lounge tonight. His name's Griff. He is 18 years old, and he is green as they come. He's got nothing but stars in his eyes. He just wants to become a pro kiteboarder, and he hears all these stories, and this is what makes him want to do this. And I just feel lucky to be in the position to where, you know, we can guide some of these kids and help them and fulfill the dream, and one day we'll be interviewing them. So
there you go, man. Exactly, dude. Hey, I'm sitting here, man. There's a pot of whales out there. Like I said, it's 15 feet. You know, anything that you want, you know, I mean, you know, you got to put it out there in the universe. It'll happen. You know, to me, it's like, you know, like I said, I had some ego issues. You know, and you know what? The bottom line is, we still have ego issues at times. You know, but you know, at the end of the day, man, ego means absolutely nothing, man. It's about the fun that we're having. You know, again, you know, I'm watching my buddy again just get pulled into about a 30-foot face wave. He's just, you know, and I'm wishing I'm out there, but I'm out of the lineup for right now. So, you know, like I said. You know what? People just, you know, courteous and calm to others. You know, like I said, I've had some issues where I haven't been to surfers, but you know, I've changed a lot since, you know, I've watched people pass away in my life, and you know, like I said today, it's all about the moment. So, you know, again, thanks a lot, Ryan, man.
Yeah, no problem. And this will be up online here tonight. And you know what? There's all these people in the lounge are saying, this is awesome, I learned a lot, and we've got at least 10 people in the lounge right now who are just stoked on everything that went down tonight. So, dude, get better, get back on the water, and let's get some photos
I will,
of you.
Dude, don't worry, you can't keep me off the water. I actually went out there for a little bit today. So, and you know what, and the people that listen, man, thanks a lot. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, and you know what, this is a small world, and it's a vast ocean. There's tons of places to ride, man, and, you know, people are going to get to experience. You know, just remember to, you know, it's just, the bottom line is, you know, when you go out and wave ride, just, you know, be cautious of what's going on, be safe, you know, and you know, try to just, you know, throw it down for others, man, and everyone will throw it down to you.
Well, right on, dude. Well, you have a good night, or actually I should say a good evening, and be safe out there, bro.
Okay, hey, Ryan, take care, man. Thanks
all right.
a lot, brother.
Bye-bye. Bye. Well, that concludes podcast number 66, Conrad Bright. Conrad is a very outspoken guy, and just obviously you can feel his intensity for kiteboarding and love for the sport. For those of you who want to learn more about Conrad, he does have a MySpace page. Actually, I forgot to get it from him, but you can go on MySpace and Google search Conrad Bright. Also, you can go to the best page, or you can come to asnews.net or the Kiteboarder magazine. So, anyway, I want to thank everybody in the lounge for showing up tonight, and appreciate all the questions and all the support. And for those of you who haven't had a chance, go to the Kiteboarder magazine, download the new issue. In 5 days, we've had over 30,000 downloads of this thing, which means that people are liking it. And so check it out. It was just released, and give us some feedback. And also, if you want to support us, buy a subscription to our magazine. I hate to do the thankless plug for ourselves, but many of you email and say, how can I support you? How can I support you? Well, literally, your subscriptions to our magazine is what keeps this going. We don't make any money off this. This is just purely for fun, and we try to get as many people on the show as possible. The sponsors, ads that you hear, we throw those in basically to give them a little bone so they'll advertise in our magazine. And again, you can subscribe at thekiteboarder.com. So thank you very much, everybody, for all the support, all the words of wisdom, and everything else that you send our way. And we'll just keep bringing you more and more shows. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, wanna know, yeah.